The teenager stepped into the courtroom slowly, almost as if he was unsure whether he should even be there. His shoes were old, his shirt was simple, and he carried a small brown folder pressed tightly against his chest. He was only 17, but his eyes looked older, like someone who had seen many difficult days. As he walked forward, people in the courtroom turned their heads and stared. Some whispered, some smiled softly with confusion, others raised their eyebrows, wondering why someone so young had entered such a serious place. He did not seem scared, but he did look out of place among the polished lawyers, the confident officers, and the people dressed for an important moment. He stood quietly near the back of the room, waiting for something no one knew what. Even the security officer at the door looked at him twice, checking if he had mistaken the place for somewhere else. But the boy stayed calm. He kept looking toward the judge's seat, almost like he knew exactly where he needed to be. The courtroom was busy that morning. Papers were being moved around, lawyers were discussing cases, and people were speaking in low voices. But the teenager did not join any group. He stayed by himself. He didn't speak to anyone. He didn't even sit down. He simply stood straight, with his hands around the folder, as if guarding something important. A woman sitting nearby glanced at him and whispered to her friend, "Maybe he's waiting for his parents." Her friend replied softly, "Or maybe he walked into the wrong courtroom." The teenage boy heard them, but he did not react. He only looked ahead with calm eyes. There was something unusual in those eyes, something focused, something strong. When the judge finally entered the room, everyone stood up. The teenager also stood, but not in a rushed or nervous way. He did it respectfully, like he understood every rule. When everyone sat again, the judge began calling names and reading cases. The boy waited, not moving a single step. Each time a lawyer or a defendant walked forward, he watched carefully. He listened to every word spoken, as if he was studying each moment. The judge noticed him after a few minutes. His eyes paused on the teenager for a second, and a small, curious smile appeared on his face. The judge thought maybe the boy was here by mistake. He continued with his work, but he kept glancing in the boy's direction, wondering why he was still standing there. Finally, after almost 20 minutes, the judge looked directly at him and said in a light, playful tone, "Young man, are you lost? This is a courtroom, not a school tour." People laughed quietly. A few turned to look at the teen again. The boy didn't smile or get embarrassed. Instead, he replied respectfully, "No, sir, I am here for a case." A few lawyers exchanged surprised looks. One lawyer whispered, "He must be here as a witness." Another said, "Or maybe he's just confused." The judge raised an eyebrow and leaned forward slightly. "You're here for a case?" he repeated, his voice still playful. "Whose case? Your parents? Your teachers?" The boy shook his head. "No, sir, it is my case." The courtroom fell silent. Even the lawyers stopped flipping their papers. Everyone looked at the teen again, but this time with curiosity. The boy did not look nervous or scared. He stood there like he belonged, even though his simple clothes and young age made him seem like he didn't. The judge tried to keep his tone light. "You have a case here today. Do you even understand how court works?" The boy nodded slowly. "Yes, sir, I understand." His calm voice surprised many people. The judge, still thinking the boy was confused, said, "Then why don't you come forward and explain why you're here? Let's clear the confusion." The teen took a deep breath and walked toward the front of the courtroom. His steps were slow but steady. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate. Everyone's eyes followed him as he reached the small table in the center of the room. He placed his small brown folder gently on the table and looked at the judge with respect. His hands did not shake. His voice did not tremble. He simply said, "Sir, I am here to speak on behalf of someone." The judge blinked, surprised. "On behalf of someone? Who sent you?" The boy looked down for a moment, then back up. "No one sent me, sir. I came by myself. I studied everything, and I am ready." People exchanged looks of shock. A teenager, speaking in court, representing someone? How could that be possible? But the boy did not look like he was joking. He did not look scared. He looked prepared. The judge leaned back, still confused but now a little more serious. The boy's confidence was not normal for someone his age. Something was different about him, something hidden, something strong, something the courtroom had not yet understood. And at that moment, even before he opened the folder, the teenager had already changed the entire atmosphere of the courtroom. The boy who looked out of place suddenly didn't seem out of place anymore. The courtroom stayed quiet as the teenager stood at the center, holding his small brown folder. Everyone waited for what he would say next. The judge looked down at him with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. It was rare to see someone so young standing alone in front of a judge, and even rarer to see that person standing with such calmness. The judge decided to lighten the mood again, thinking the boy might simply be nervous or confused. He smiled softly and said, "Young man, are you sure you didn't follow someone here by mistake? Maybe you're looking for a school competition held in the wrong building?" The courtroom laughed again. People covered their smiles, trying not to sound rude. Even a few lawyers laughed quietly behind their hands. They didn't mean to be unkind. They simply couldn't imagine a teenager being serious in such an important place. But the teenager didn't laugh. He stood straight and answered gently, "No, sir, I am here for a case." His calm tone surprised the judge again, but he still assumed the boy didn't understand. He leaned forward and said jokingly, "So tell me, which video did you watch this morning that made you think you can stand in a courtroom?" A few people chuckled. It was harsh, but the judge thought he was being funny. Still, the teenager didn't break. He didn't look embarrassed. He didn't even look upset. He only replied, "Sir, I studied everything I need, this time." The judge stopped smiling. Something about the boy's voice made him pause. It held confidence, not childish bravado. The judge crossed his arms and tilted his head. "You studied everything? And what exactly did you study?" The boy slowly opened his folder. Inside, there were handwritten notes, neatly arranged papers, and printed legal references. The judge blinked, surprised. He didn't expect that, but even then, he shook his head and said lightly, "You know, studying a few things online doesn't make someone ready for a courtroom. This place is serious business." The teen nodded, still calm. "Yes, sir, I know that, but I studied more than a few things." A lawyer whispered loudly enough for others to hear. "Maybe he memorized a few words and thinks he's a lawyer." Another laughed softly. "This is going to be interesting." The judge sighed, thinking the boy needed guidance. "Look, son," he said in a gentle, teasing tone, "this is not a place to play. You can't treat court like a school project. You're too young to understand how things work here." The boy stayed silent for a moment. Then he lifted his head and said, "Sir, I understand more than you think." Something in his voice made the judge raise an eyebrow. The boy wasn't challenging him. He wasn't loud. He wasn't angry. He simply sounded sure. Still, the judge continued teasing him, trying to bring the boy back to reality. "So, tell me," he said with a half smile, "are you planning to argue a case with those little notes of yours? Do you think the court will listen to a teenager?" The teenager lowered his eyes for a moment, not from shame but from deep thought. Then he answered softly, "I believe the court listens to truth, not age." That reply stunned many people. A woman in the audience whispered, "That's a strong thing to say." Another person nodded slowly. "He doesn't sound like a normal kid." The judge, however, still didn't take him seriously. "Truth is important, yes," he said, "but experience matters too. Legal work is not something you just walk into." The boy nodded. "Yes, sir, I agree. That is why I studied day and night for months." The judge froze. Months. He expected the boy to say days, or maybe weeks, but months. Still, the judge shook his head. "Even if you studied," he said, "that doesn't make you ready. You're too young. You probably don't even understand the meaning of half the terms written in your folder." The teenager gently placed his folder on the table. He did not speak. He waited. The judge, confused, said, "Why are you quiet now? Do you finally understand that this is not a simple place?" The boy replied, "I am quiet because you asked me questions, and I will answer them, but only when you allow me to start." His respectful tone made the judge stop again. This boy wasn't stubborn. He wasn't trying to act smart. He was simply patient, and something about that patience made the judge feel unsure for the first time. The judge leaned back and said, "Fine, if you insist, then tell me why you think you belong here." The teenager took a deep breath. His eyes softened, not with fear, but with determination. "Because, sir," he began, "someone important to me needs help, and I am the only person left who can speak for them." A wave of silence spread across the room. Even the laughter stopped. The judge stared at him. "Someone important?" "Yes, sir," the boy said. "They cannot speak for themselves today, so I came." The judge opened his mouth to say something, but the words didn't come out. The boy's sincerity was too real, too strong. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't a mistake, and it certainly wasn't a childish adventure. The teenager wasn't here to play. He wasn't pretending. He was here with a purpose. For the first time, the judge felt something shift inside the courtroom, a small, quiet respect beginning to grow. And soon, the entire room would learn who this teenager truly was. The courtroom waited in silence as the teenager gently opened his brown folder. His hands were calm, steady, and sure. People leaned forward in their seats. Lawyers paused their whispering. Even the security officer at the door stopped checking his phone. Something was happening, something no one expected. The judge watched him carefully. He was no longer joking. There was still doubt on his face, but a small seed of curiosity had started to grow. He wanted to know what the boy would say. Even if he still believed the teenager was out of his depth, the boy took a quiet breath, placed one paper on the table, and lifted his head. His voice was soft at first, but steady. "Sir, I would like to explain why I am here," he said. "Go ahead," the judge replied, his tone no longer playful, but cautious. The teenager looked at the paper in front of him, then back at the judge. "The case today," he began, "is about a misunderstanding, a serious misunderstanding." People shifted in their seats. The boy's tone had changed. No fear, no hesitation, only clarity. The judge nodded. "And what do you know about this misunderstanding?" The teen did not answer immediately. Instead, he read one sentence from his paper, word for word, in a calm and clear tone that surprised everyone. The judge blinked, confused. "Where did you get that?" he asked. "From the case file, sir," the boy replied. "I read it carefully." A lawyer, seated a few feet away, frowned. "How did he get access to the case file?" he whispered. The teenager continued. "There are 3 important facts in this case," he said, "and all 3 facts were overlooked." The judge narrowed his eyes. "Overlooked by whom?" "By everyone, sir," the boy said gently. "Because everyone was looking at the wrong detail." A few people gasped lightly. The teenager was not just speaking, he was guiding the entire courtroom. The judge leaned on his desk. "All right," he said slowly. "Explain these facts to me." The boy nodded. "The first fact," he said, pointing to the paper, "is the time." "The time?" the judge repeated. "Yes, sir," the boy replied. "The time written in the report does not match the time written in the witness statement." The judge took a moment to check the file in front of him. Then his expression changed. He noticed the mismatch. He hadn't caught it earlier. "How did you see this?" the judge asked quietly. "I read it 5 times, sir," the teen said. "I wanted to be sure." The judge did not know what to say, but the teenager was not finished. "The second fact," he said, "is the location." The judge raised his eyebrows. "What about the location?" "The location in the report is different from the one recorded in the camera footage." Several people in the courtroom exchanged surprised glances. The boy continued. "The report says near the old store, but the camera shows the event happened near the bus stop." A lawyer murmured, "He's right. It does." "And the third fact," the teen said softly, "is the witness's view." The witness said they were standing at a corner, but the corner they named is blocked by a wall. They could not have seen what they claimed to see. A sudden wave of silence filled the room. No one laughed anymore. No one smiled. Everyone was stunned. The teenager looked at the judge with steady eyes. "Sir," he said, "these mistakes matter. These mistakes change everything." The judge felt a chill run down his back, not from fear, but from shock. He picked up the papers again, checking them more carefully this time. He could not believe a teenager noticed details that trained adults had missed. "How long have you been studying this?" the judge asked quietly. The boy hesitated for the first time, not from fear, but from emotion. "Since the day my family needed help," he said. "I had no lawyer, no one to guide me, so I decided to learn on my own." The judge's eyes softened. People in the courtroom lowered their heads. The boy's story was becoming clear. "And what exactly did you learn?" the judge asked. The teenager lifted his head and spoke with a strength that filled the room. "I learned that truth is simple," he said, "but sometimes people forget to look closely. Sometimes they follow the loudest voice instead of the clearest one." The judge sat back, stunned into silence. The teenager continued, "Sir, I am not here to act smart. I am not here to prove anything about myself. I am only here because someone I care about needs someone to speak for them, and I cannot let them stand alone." The judge swallowed, feeling something tighten in his chest. This boy's words were not rehearsed. They were real, honest, and deeply powerful. The judge spoke softly now. You have a gift, son. A serious gift." The boy simply nodded. "I only want to help, sir. That is all." The judge looked around the courtroom. Every face was changed. No more laughter. No more teasing. No more disbelief. Everyone now saw the truth. The teenager wasn't pretending. He wasn't confused. He wasn't lost. He was prepared, far more prepared than anyone had imagined. And the judge knew. This was only the beginning. The courtroom had never felt so quiet. It was the kind of silence that pressed against the walls and settled into every corner of the room. The teenager stood there, small in size but somehow larger than everyone else in presence. His voice had softened, but his words still echoed in people's minds like clear bells that refused to fade. Even the judge, a man who had handled hundreds of cases and listened to countless arguments, found himself sitting straighter, listening carefully to every breath the teen took. It felt strange to him. He was supposed to lead the courtroom, but now it felt as if the room was moving to the rhythm of the teenager's calm explanations. The judge cleared his throat, trying to keep a professional face. "Young man," he said, "these are serious observations. Are you telling me you found all this by reading the file on your own?" The boy nodded. "Yes, sir." "And how long did you study this?" "Many nights," the teenager answered. "I stayed awake even when I was tired. I read until I understood every line." The judge slowly nodded, trying to hide how impressed he truly was. Lawyers sitting nearby shifted uncomfortably. They were trained adults, but none of them had caught the mismatched time, the incorrect location, or the impossible witness view. The thought made them uneasy. One lawyer whispered to another, "He found more in a week than some people find in a year." Another whispered back, "This kid, he's something else." The teenager continued, his voice soft but sure, "Sir, the case seems simple, but it is not. The mistakes in the papers change everything. A wrong time can create a wrong picture. A wrong location can create the wrong idea. And a wrong witness view can make someone look guilty when they are not." The courtroom absorbed his words like thirsty soil absorbing rain. The judge leaned forward. "And why did you notice these details when others did not?" The boy took a moment before answering. "Because I was looking for the truth." Not the easy answer. A gentle, surprised sound escaped someone in the audience. It wasn't laughter this time, it was admiration. The judge rested his chin on his hand. "And who taught you to look for truth like that?" The teen hesitated for a moment, then said, "Life did, sir." The judge felt something soften inside him. This boy wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't showing off. He was simply being honest. "Tell me something," the judge said. "Why didn't you ask a lawyer for help?" The teen lowered his eyes. "We could not afford one, sir." A hush fell over the courtroom again. Not a whisper, not a sigh, just silence. The judge's face changed. His teasing smile was gone now, replaced by something more serious, something almost protective. "And who are you speaking for today?" he asked softly. The boy looked up slowly. His eyes were calm but filled with something deep: love, worry, responsibility, everything at once. "For my mother, sir," he said. "She is scared. She is confused. She doesn't understand the papers or the rules. So I must help her." A woman in the back placed a hand over her mouth. A man next to her blinked away unexpected emotion. This wasn't just a brave teenager. This was a son fighting for his family. The judge exhaled deeply. Suddenly, his earlier jokes felt heavy and uncomfortable. He couldn't believe he had mocked this boy who stayed awake at night, studying complicated laws. Not for pride, not for fun, but out of love. The teenager took another paper from his folder and held it up. "Sir, this is my mother's statement," he said. "She told the truth, but she did not know how to explain it in the right words, so people did not believe her." The judge reached out gently. "Let me see that." The teen walked toward him and placed the paper on the judge's desk. For a moment, their hands brushed, and the judge felt how cold the boy's fingers were. He must have been standing there, tense and focused, for a long time. The judge read the paper carefully. His eyebrows slowly lifted. "These notes," he said, "they are very detailed. You explained everything clearly. Did you write these?" The boy nodded again. "Yes, sir. I tried to write them simply, so they make sense." The judge looked at the paper again, then looked at the boy. "You have a gift," he said quietly. "A real gift." The teenager didn't react with pride. He simply said, "I only wanted to help my mother." The judge felt a lump in his throat, something he hadn't felt in many years. He pushed aside his emotions and turned to the courtroom. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "I think we all owe this young man our attention." Everyone nodded. Everyone understood. This was not the story of a teenager who walked into the wrong room. This was the story of a boy who walked into the right room, at the right time, with the truth in his hands, and the courtroom, for the first time that day, truly listened. The judge held the teenager's handwritten notes for a long moment, reading each line with slow, careful eyes. Everyone watched him, waiting to see how he would react. Even the lawyers, who usually looked confident and busy, sat perfectly still. The courtroom felt like it had stopped breathing. Finally, the judge looked up from the papers. His voice was quieter now. "Young man," he said, "you wrote all this on your own." The teenager nodded. "Yes, sir, I had to. There was no one else." There was something in his voice, something honest and soft that made the room feel heavier, as if the truth itself had opened a window everyone had ignored. The judge leaned back for a moment, thinking. Then he asked gently, "Tell me, when did you start learning about the law?" The boy looked down at his shoes, then slowly lifted his head. "The day my mother got into trouble, sir," he said. "She cried because she didn't understand what people were saying. She didn't know how to explain her side. I wanted to help her, but I didn't know anything. So that night, I started reading." The room was silent. The words were simple, but the pain behind them was real. The judge folded his hands. "You mean, you learned all this because you wanted to protect your mother?" "Yes, sir," the boy said softly. "She works every day and never asks for anything. She always helped me. So when she needed help, I could not just watch." A woman in the audience wiped her eyes quietly. A man next to her shook his head in disbelief, whispering, "What kind of heart does this boy have?" The judge took a deep breath and looked through the papers again. He stopped at a page with neat handwriting, underlined with care. "This part," the judge said, tapping it gently, "where you explain the timeline. How did you figure this out?" The teen smiled faintly. "I kept reading the report again and again. The times didn't match, so I used a small notebook and wrote down every minute that mattered. When I compared them, I saw the mistake." A soft ripple moved through the audience, a quiet sound of awe. "And the location?" the judge asked. "How did you find that mistake?" The boy took a breath. "I walked there." "Sir, you walked there?" the judge repeated, surprised. "Yes," the boy said. "I walked to the place in the report. Then I walked to the place shown in the video. They were different. So I knew something was wrong." The judge stared at him. This boy wasn't guessing. He wasn't pretending. He had done real work some adults never even think to do. "And the witness?" the judge asked. "How did you know their view was blocked?" The teenager folded his hands behind his back, standing straight. "I went to see the corner," he explained. "There is an old wall there. If someone stands where the witness said they stood, they cannot see anything. I checked it many times to be sure." A lawyer's jaw dropped slightly. He whispered to his colleague, "This kid practically investigated the case better than anyone." Another lawyer added, quietly, "He didn't do it for pride. He did it for love." The judge kept studying the boy's face. His voice softened even more. "Did your mother know you were doing all this?" The teen shook his head. "No, sir. She thought I was sleeping. I didn't want to worry her." The judge's expression changed completely. His earlier teasing smile was gone. His stern courtroom face softened into something human, almost fatherly. "Young man," he said quietly, "you remind me of why truth matters. Sometimes adults forget, but you looked for it with your whole heart." The boy stayed silent, but his eyes showed gratitude. Someone from the audience called out softly, "He's remarkable." Another whispered, "He deserves respect." The judge tapped the papers again and said to the court, "These notes, these details, they change everything in this case. This boy has brought forward information we all missed." A wave of murmurs moved through the room. The teenager looked at the judge carefully. "Sir," he said, "I am not saying anyone was wrong on purpose. People make mistakes. But my mother should not suffer because of small mistakes." The judge nodded slowly. "You're right." Then he added something no one expected. "Young man, you may be the youngest person to ever stand in my courtroom, but you are also one of the clearest thinkers." A small tremble ran through the courtroom. Even the teenager looked surprised. The judge smiled gently. "Your mother raised a strong, thoughtful, brave young man." The boy lowered his eyes again, but this time with pride instead of fear. The judge turned to the court staff. "Bring in the full case file," he instructed. "We will review every detail again, this time with the corrections made by this young man." People nodded. People whispered. But mostly, people respected. The truth had come out, and it had come from the most unexpected person in the room, the teenager who walked in quietly, with a worn-out folder and a heart full of determination. And now, the entire courtroom saw him in a new light, not as a child, not as a joke. The judge sat quietly for a long moment. his eyes moving slowly across the teenager's notes again and again. The courtroom watched him with full attention. Everyone could feel that something important was happening, something bigger than the case, bigger than the mistake, even bigger than the court itself. It was a moment of truth, and everyone could sense it finally. The judge placed the papers back on his desk, folded his hands, and lifted his eyes toward the teenager. His expression had completely changed. The teasing smile was gone. The tired courtroom routine was gone too. For the first time that day, he looked at the teenager with deep respect. "Young man," the judge began, his voice surprisingly gentle, "I must say something to you." The boy stayed still, his hands resting calmly at his sides. He waited patiently, not knowing what the judge would say next. The judge took a slow breath. "Earlier today," he said, "I made fun of you. I spoke to you as if you were lost, confused, or simply playing a game." He paused, the weight of his words filling the silent room. "But I was wrong." The audience leaned forward. Even the lawyers watched with wide eyes. No one expected a judge, a person known for formality and distance, to speak this honestly. The judge continued, "When you first walked into this courtroom, I judged you by your age, by your clothes, and by your silence. I thought you did not belong here." He looked at the boy steadily. "But you proved me wrong, completely wrong." The teenager looked surprised. He had not come for praise or apologies. He had come only to help his mother. But hearing the judge speak with such honesty touched him deeply. "I apologize," the judge said clearly, with his full voice carrying across the entire room. "You deserved respect from the moment you walked in, and I did not give it to you." A soft gasp rose from the audience. Some people covered their mouths. A judge apologizing openly, especially to a teenager, was rare, powerful, and sincere. The boy swallowed gently and whispered, "Thank you, sir." But the judge wasn't finished. "You have done something remarkable today," he said. "You showed careful thinking, strong heart, and true courage. You stayed calm even when I, and others, laughed at you. Many adults cannot do what you did." The teenager lowered his eyes, not in shame, but in humility. "I only did what I needed to do for my mother," he said softly. "And that," the judge replied, "is exactly what makes your actions so extraordinary." The judge reached for the case file and held it up for the whole courtroom to see. "This young man," he said, "found mistakes that several trained people overlooked, not because he wanted attention, not because he wanted to show off, but because he wanted justice for someone he loves." People nodded, touched by the sincerity of the moment. One woman in the back wiped tears from her eyes. A man whispered, "This kid, he has more strength than most adults." The judge glanced around the room. Then he looked back at the boy. "I want you to stand beside your mother today," he said. "You have earned that right, but as someone truly extraordinary." The teenager nodded quietly. A small smile touched his lips. His shoulders relaxed just a little, as if a heavy weight had been lifted. The judge then spoke to the entire courtroom. "It is easy to judge someone by appearances," he said. "Easy to assume, easy to mock. But this young man reminded all of us today that wisdom can come from unexpected places." The lawyers who had laughed earlier felt their cheeks warm. Some lowered their eyes. Others looked at the teenager with sincere admiration now. The judge motioned toward the boy gently. "Young man, I am proud of you," he said. "You showed kindness, patience, and strength. These are the qualities of a true leader and maybe even a future attorney." The boy's eyes widened slightly. He had never heard anyone say something like that to him before. "Sir, I only learned what I needed," he murmured. "But you learned with purpose," the judge replied. "And that makes all the difference." The judge then leaned forward and asked softly, "May I speak with your mother now?" "Yes, sir," the teenager said. "She is waiting outside. She was too nervous to come in." A small smile touched the judge's lips. "Then please bring her in. She deserves to hear what I will say." The boy nodded and turned toward the door. Every person in the courtroom watched him with newfound respect. When he reached the exit, he paused, placed a hand on the door, and closed his eyes for one quiet second. Relief, gratitude, and hope all blending together. Then he stepped outside to bring his mother in. Inside the courtroom, the judge sat back, deep in thought. He looked at the papers again, then at the empty space where the teenager had stood just moments ago. And for the first time that day, the courtroom felt lighter, not because the case was solved yet, but because the truth spoken by a young, determined boy had finally found its voice. When the teenager walked out of the courtroom to call his mother, his steps felt lighter than before. For days, he had been worried that he would not be taken seriously, worried that people would laugh, worried that he would fail the one person who mattered the most to him. But now, something inside him had shifted. The judge's apology, the courtroom's silence, the respect in people's eyes, it all made his heart feel warm and calm. He found his mother sitting on a wooden bench outside the courtroom. She held her handbag close and looked at the floor, nervous and unsure. When she saw her son approaching, she stood quickly. "Is everything all right?" she asked, her voice trembling. The teenager gave her a small smile. "Yes, Mom. The judge wants to talk to you." She blinked in surprise. "Me, why?" "Because he wants to hear your side," the boy said gently. "And he respects you." His mother's eyes filled with confusion, but also with trust. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "You worked so hard for this," she whispered softly. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to," he said. "You raised me. This is the least I can do." They walked back into the courtroom together. People turned their heads as the pair entered, this time not with curiosity or amusement, but with genuine admiration. Everyone now knew the truth. This teenager was not a lost kid. He was a brave young man who had walked into a courtroom alone for his mother. The judge stood when they approached, something he rarely did. "Ma'am," he said respectfully, "please take a seat." The mother looked surprised but did what he said. The judge continued, "Your son has presented some very important information today, information that helps your case greatly." Her eyes widened, and she looked at her son with disbelief. He did. The judge smiled warmly. "He did more than many trained adults do. He studied, he checked details, and he spoke with honesty and courage." The mother held her hand over her heart. "He stayed up many nights," she said quietly, "but I didn't know he was learning all of this." The judge nodded gently. "He did it to protect you." The mother's eyes filled with tears that she tried to hide. She reached for her son's hand and held it tightly. The courtroom watched the moment with soft hearts. It was simple, pure, and deeply human. The judge then turned to the whole courtroom. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "today we saw something rare. A young person who refused to give up. A young person who believed in truth more than fear. A young person who stood up for someone he loves." The lawyers nodded. People in the audience nodded. Even the security officer nodded. The judge continued, "This boy reminded us that justice is not about age. It is about honesty, effort, and heart." He then addressed the teenager directly. "Young man, you have earned my respect and the respect of everyone in this courtroom." The boy swallowed and nodded. "Thank you, sir." The judge leaned forward. "I want you to continue your studies," he said. "You have a mind and heart that can help many people. If you choose to become an attorney one day, I believe you will be an excellent one." The boy froze. No teacher had ever said that. No adult had ever said that. But now, a judge, a leader of the court, was telling him this with full honesty. A proud, shy smile spread across the teenager's face. "Thank you, sir," he whispered again. The judge then made the final announcement. "This case will be reviewed again, with all corrections made. And your mother," he said while turning to her, "will have a fair chance to explain her side." The mother bowed her head gratefully, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Thank you so much." When the hearing ended, people began to leave the courtroom. But instead of walking out quickly, many stopped near the boy. Some tapped his shoulder. Some smiled warmly. Some said, "Good job." Others said, "You're amazing." A lawyer even said, "If you ever want an internship in the future, come find me." The boy felt shy but happy. His mother wiped her eyes and said, "I am so proud of you." They stepped outside into the sunlight. The air felt fresh, like a new beginning. The teenager closed his eyes for a moment and let the warm sun fall on his face. He didn't feel like the quiet boy in old clothes anymore. He felt strong. He felt seen. He felt respected. He had walked into a courtroom as a teenager that no one believed in. He walked out as someone everyone admired. And as he walked beside his mother, holding her hand tightly, he knew one thing for sure. He had done the right thing for her, for truth, and for himself.